On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA is a dynamic podcast that brings together some of the most influential voices in the nation.
From union leaders and elected officials to law enforcement experts who explore the pressing issues shaping America.
Through thought-provoking conversations, we empower listeners to think critically about law enforcement, political policy, and the future of our society.
Available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and all Suffolk PBA social media platforms. Tune in to On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA.
Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hutter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the sergeant at arms of the PBA.
And on today's episode, we have Assemblyman Mike Durso joining us from the New York State Assembly 9th District. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Guys, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Mike, you grew up in a household that was very much involved in the labor movement. You're raised in Massapequa, local Long Island guy. What made you want to get involved in politics?
I'm still trying to figure that out myself. No, it was actually, it's a funny story. So locally, we were having a village trustee race in the village of Massapequa Park. A good friend of mine, Dan Pearl, was running for mayor. I said, I'd love to run for trustee. And I was involved, politically prior, but nothing to where I wanted to be elected, or I never even thought about it, never wanted to do it. Turns out I didn't end up running. It turns out my wife, Dana, ended up running for village trustee. She won, which was great. I went back to my job, no problem. And then one day I got a call saying, do you want to run for New York State Assembly? And I said, are you sure you're calling the right Durso? I wasn't really sure why or what to do with that. But honestly, it was a great honor to even be considered to do it. I ran and we won. So ever since then, I've been in the New York State Assembly. This is my 5th year, 3rd term, right in the middle of my 3rd term. And I really love it. It's a wonderful experience.
Well, I'm glad they called this Durso, because ever since you took office, you've been a great ally to us. We've always had open lines of communication. And anytime we had any concerns about something going on up in Albany, you've been just a phone call away. And we appreciate that kind of relationship with the electeds we have.
Thank you. And obviously that's important. Listen, coming from where I grew up, not only the union side of it with the PBA, but law enforcement in general. I've had a respect for law enforcement since I was a child. My grandfather, who lived with me his whole life, my whole life, was a military guy. So we just have respect for the uniform. We have respect for people who work hard, protect us, involved in their community. And that's exactly what law enforcement does, especially here on Long Island. It's your neighbor. We all live next to each other. We're all here to respect each other, and law enforcement deserves every bit of the respect that they should get.
Right.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. We spoke, we mentioned quickly the House of Labor you grew up in, right? Mm-hmm. Your family's background. Your father's John Durso,
yes,
right? President of the Long Island Federation of Labor, right? So did he kind of push you to be part of that labor movement? Did he always teach you the value of hard work and looking out for the working class man?
So the value of hard work, absolutely. Never pushed, was never pushy like that. Mm-hmm. But, you learn by seeing. Mm-hmm. And when you see your father doing the hard work that he does and really trying to help the working men and women of Long Island, why wouldn't you want to be involved in that? And again, like I said, my grandfather was a very blue-collar person, worked for Grumman building F-14s, military guy. Again, it's the respect for that hardworking middle-class person. That's what Massapequa is. That's what most of Long Island is.
Right. That's what the suburbs are.
Correct. And that's what gave us that dream, right? That it gives us all that American dream is hard work, wanting to raise your family, have a good paying job, good salary, be able to live on Long Island, thrive here on Long Island, thrive in New York State. So it kind of just stuck. Mm-hmm. And again, when I was a sanitation worker, I was a shop steward for CSEA, got involved in contract negotiations. And then at my second job at night, I was involved with the contract negotiations as a Teamster. So it just kind of stuck and then carried on from there.
Right. And you know what I find interesting too? The modern day Republicans have very much become the working class party.
Yes.
Especially here on Long Island. A lot of the Republicans have experience as being either part of a union or being a representative in a union.
Yes.
All right. And a lot of people kind of always relate that to the Democratic Party, which was probably true back in like the 60s, 70s. But I feel like more so now, the local Republicans are more in line with our sort of labor views.
I would agree with that. I mean, if you look at anybody from our presiding officer here in Suffolk County, Kevin McCaffrey, who was a Teamster president, Jim Mazzarella, Nick Caracappa, just right there alone in Suffolk County Legislature, you have 3 pretty prominent union people.
Yeah.
And then all throughout, Mario Matera, senator, in the Smithtown area, myself. I mean, has nothing to do with party. It really doesn't. It's just about the fact that you are a hardworking individual. And you look at the trades unions, right? Most of their members are more to the Republican side.
Right.
And when we say the Republican side, it's really more a matter of they're just hardworking individuals that want to live here on Long Island, be able to afford to live here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And want to be safe. So they back our police just like we do. They want their communities and their families to be safe. Why wouldn't we all want that? That's not a Republican or Democrat issue. In fact, the matter is, I have 2 daughters. I want them to be safe. You know who protects them? The police, our law enforcement here on Long Island. Why wouldn't we want that? So there is no divide in that way. And I think that, the more Republicans that we have that are union friendly, understand the union movement, come from the union movement, I think we'll all be better off.
The public safety thing has been a big thing over the past 4 or 5 years, especially after COVID and the George Floyd thing. I think you saw, especially you being upstate during that time period, I'm sure you saw how public safety created a divide amongst members of the caucus.
Yeah, well, and again, I would differ in the way you said it. Public safety didn't cause a divide. We as politicians caused the divide. And that's a problem. And again, and either on the right side of it or on your wrong side of it. I'm sorry. There's no middle ground on that. Everybody wants to be safe.
Right.
Everybody wants to have public safety for their families, themselves, their communities. And again, like I said, those that are keeping us safe, like yourselves, the other members of your unions here in Nassau and Suffolk and New York City and upstate, they're your neighbors. They're sitting there working with you. They're going to your ball games. They're coaching your kids' little leagues. Have some respect. Understand. Listen, bad things happen in every industry. Whether you're a police officer, whether you're an iron worker, whether you're a politician, there's bad apples in everything, right? We understand that. And if you break the law, you have to be held accountable. Doesn't mean everybody's bad. And the fact of the matter is 99.9% of the time, you're willing to go help someone that you don't know. You're going to run into a house where there's danger. You're going to run into a building where there's danger. And that deserves a tremendous amount of respect. And we all need to be able to respect that and understand the jobs that you guys do.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And I think one of the things that we kind of talk about here in Suffolk County is that most of our local Democrats are those working class Dems you think of from the 60s and 70s. But it's great to feel that labor support, because really it's humanitarian issue, right?
Yeah.
From both sides of the aisle locally. And you've been a big part of that from the Republican side. And I like that with your labor background and your family background, they've kind of found committees that fit your expertise, right? So you're part of the labor committee up in Albany, all right? You're part of the transportation committee up in Albany, right? So these are committees that you kind of have backgrounds in and experience in either working in or living through.
Correct. And I give the credit to our minority leader, Will Barclay, who's put me on those committees because he understands that my commitment to it and the labor movement, understanding that I could be an asset to our conference throughout the state. Again, I think we're very lucky here on Long Island. Again, either side of the aisle that you sit on, that we could kind of, listen, when it's not campaign time, right? We work really well together.
Yeah,
and we understand that Long Island issues are Long Island issues. And we have to work together as elected officials, whether it's with the state, the county, and the towns, to get things done for the people that we represent. And that's something that we've been able to do here on Long Island better than a lot of areas. Campaign time is campaign time. We all understand that. But again, being able to bring each other together and again, have understanding from both sides. Again, to where the typical person that would think that labor is aligned with the Democrat Party or those that are Democrats are aligned with labor. That's not the case.
Right.
I've had more arguments with people on the other side of the aisle about labor issues and them not understanding it from the labor side. And I was actually surprised in my first couple of years where I'd be like, what do you not understand? You're a Democrat. You should be for labor. Where it's not always that way. People do a lot of things for votes sometimes, and that's unfortunate, where I actually truly believe in it.
Right. And so one of the hot topic issues right now on Long Island, and it was all over News 12 this morning when I was having coffee with my wife, is the upcoming potential Long Island Railroad strike. Now, as part of the Labor Committee and Transportation Committee up in Albany, is this something you guys monitor and talk about? Is this something that you're proactively engaging with the unions or the MTA about, or is this something you kind of sit back and watch a little bit? How do you approach that from the Albany side?
So we're getting updates on it, and again, we have a meeting after actually this podcast for elected officials to get a little heads up on what's going on, what the potential could happen. Again, it's labor unions that are trying to get whatever they can for their members. Mm-hmm. So you can't really get involved in it. And again, as a labor guy, I'll never step across that strike line. It's never happening. But also understanding there's two sides of it, right? So there's the labor side of it, but then there's also the resident side of it that take the train. The train costs are going through the roof, right? We understand that. They just asked for another 4% rate increase on bridges and tunnels. The price of train tickets are going up. People have to live. People have to be able to get back and forth to work. So there is that middle ground. I think as elected officials, especially when it comes to a labor negotiation like that, best thing to do is sit back. Let's wait and see what's happening, if they can work those things out, because we have a responsibility not only to let people get to work and help them get to work and make sure that they can provide for their families, but also on the other side of it too, the people that are trying to get what they can to make sure they can live, work, and thrive here on Long Island.
Right, of course. Any political poll you see right now, it seems like the top two issues, and sometimes they're interchangeable as 1 and 2, but it's always the cost of living and public safety.
Right.
And, with this pending potential Long Island Railroad strike, we definitely want to see the workers who provide such a valuable service be able to afford to live here on Long Island.
Absolutely. And I know there's a number of labor unions that are within the railroad that all have their contracts done. So I don't know the intricacies of the negotiations that are going on, but I know there is a path set for these other labor unions to follow. Whether they do or not, that's up to them. That's up to their membership. That's how they work. But just like any other, whether it's the SOA or the DAI or the PBA, once someone kind of sets the standard, whether they go off kilter or not and ask for more, ask for less, whatever it's going to work, they have a job to do, and that's to benefit their members. So you got to kind of take a step back from it, look back from the other side of it, but at the same time, understanding that people rely on the railroad here on Long Island, right, and they need those trains running so they can get to work. So there's got to be that middle ground, and we're going to wait and see what happens on Thursday.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get that done.
Yeah, we hope so. Just from a traffic standpoint, from people at the work standpoint, and those men and women that are working on the trains be able to get back to work so they don't lose money.
Right, 100%.
I mean, if trains aren't running, they're not working, they're not getting paid. That's how it works.
Right. So, we always try to pay attention to what's going on up in Albany, who's got bills pending that would make our jobs easier. One of the things we've been facing here in Suffolk County for the last 10 to 20 years is the opioid epidemic. Yeah. And one of the big safety risks to police officers is when we're searching incident to a lawful arrest, right? Sometimes we'll get a bad guy for drug possession and they'll have something laced with fentanyl in their pockets, or there'll be something in a car laced with fentanyl. And we've been exposed to this in the past, and just simply touching it during a search can lead to one of our members overdosing. You have a bill pending right now that would actually make it an assault in the first degree to expose us to fentanyl. Can you just expand on that a little bit and kind of describe what the bill would actually do to help us?
So really what it does do is be able to, again, hold those accountable that put law enforcement, EMS workers in danger because of what they're doing. Right. This really stemmed from, we went for a visit to Rikers Island. A whole bunch of legislators that came in, and speaking to some of the officers there that work in corrections, they're getting mail that they have to check, right? They have to check it before it gets sent to those that are incarcerated. And there's fentanyl, whether it's in the papers, it's melted into the paper of a book. They wet the papers with the fentanyl in it, let it dry, so that someone could either burn it later or however they work it, or it's just be a powder or a pill inside an envelope. And they're opening it and they're being exposed to it. And then I know last year, I think it was one of our state troopers that there was a vehicle accident, went up trying to help somebody. And because there was fentanyl in the car and it was on the person's clothing or whatever, that state trooper ended up having an overdose. Thankfully, they were able to save him. But again, because you're making bad decisions, you're breaking the law. And obviously, I don't have to tell any of you how much fentanyl could kill somebody, which is, I think it's the tip of the nose on a penny.
It's a very small amount.
It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. And now if you have a handful of fentanyl, you can kill thousands upon thousands of people, if not more. It's a danger. It's a public safety danger to everybody, not just the law enforcement or the EMS that are coming up to it, but putting you in danger, putting you and your family and your other officers in danger that are answering those calls should be, it should be an assault in the first degree. It should be punished because, again, you're coming and you're going to a scene where you don't know what's happening. You don't know what you're walking into. Again, that danger, like I said before, that you put yourself above other people. And now you're going to have that exposure, possibly, that could kill you. If you're alone, if you're not with a partner, who's giving you the Narcan? If it's that serious,
right?
Maybe Narcan's not enough. Right. You just don't know. Right. And again, exposing our first responders to that, I think, is a public safety danger, and it needs to be punished.
I like that you see that there needs to be consequences.
Absolutely, there needs to be consequences for anybody. And again, as we said before, those who break the law, nobody's above the law. Those who break the law, whether it's a politician, whether it's a regular civilian, whether it's our police, they have to be punished because, again, if we're not following the law, why are you here?
Right.
I mean, why are we all here? That's what keeps our society safe.
Right. Public safety. And that's, like I said, the number 1 or 2 issue on every political poll right now.
Absolutely.
Is this a bill that's gaining traction on both sides of the fence, or?
No, unfortunately, it's not. Because again, when you want to hold people accountable and when you want to up the punishment, it seems to be that the majority kind of drags their feet on it. And again, not all police are Republican. Not all corrections officers are Republican. Not everybody has the same religion. Not everybody comes from the same background. This is protecting everybody that could be exposed to fentanyl in that way. It's not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a safety issue. And unfortunately, the majority is dragging their feet on it.
Yeah, 100%. And, we say all the time, we make our opinions based on, the issues, right? It's candidate-based endorsements. It's issue-based policies that we support. And this is something that would make our job safer. And like you said, it would trickle down to being making public safety safer, the public safer as a whole. So this is something that I hope gains more traction.
Yeah, me and you both. Yeah. And it's kind of simple if you think about it, right?
100%.
You're going to expose a first responder who, again, may not even be, may be coming to save a child, may be coming to give life-saving CPR or to another person, and they can be exposed to it. Now they can't help, right? So now you could be taking 2 lives because you've now poisoned and hurt that first responder that's coming. That's a problem. And again, it should be met with severe consequences.
Yeah.
I think the consequences, especially for stuff with drugs, though, I think if we up the consequences for something like this, that people would be less likely to use drugs. That's the way that I look at it, at least.
You know what? I think people are going to use drugs either way. But unfortunately, whether you make that decision to use drugs or not, you need to be held accountable. We're all accountable for the decisions we make, good, bad, or indifferent. Plain and simple. And the fact of the matter is, if I have fentanyl and you're exposed to it as a first responder who is responding to an emergency, it might not be to help me, it might be helping the person next to me. I now could take 2 lives. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for you, you need to be punished. And that's plain and simple. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think accountability has to be the main takeaway with this. And, ever since bail reform and, all the criminal justice reforms we've seen here in New York State, there has been a lack of accountability in a lot of circumstances. And we had one recently in Suffolk County where bad actors dismembered a human corpse and then disposed of the body in multiple different areas throughout the county. And little kids ended up finding these body parts. Right. And we weren't even able to hold these people on bail because at the time, even though there was probable cause that they dismembered this body and discarded the body, there was not probable cause that they had committed the murder at the time. And these people that were arrested for what they did with a human corpse could not be held because of the bail reform that we saw occur here in New York State.
Right.
And now you have another bill that you've sponsored that will help us address at least that portion of bail reform, where we will now be able to hold people on bail for disposing of a human corpse.
Right. So I'm carrying that bill with Senator Anthony Palumbo out in Suffolk County, far out east in Suffolk County.
Yes.
But just think about what you said. The fact that you couldn't hold somebody for throwing body parts.
It's crazy.
Right? Like
Crazy.
That's what we both said to each other. I'm like, does that even make sense?
Right.
Like you're literally throwing human body parts that you personally dismembered out a window, like a piece of trash or a cigarette butt.
Bizarre.
And you can't, I mean, you obviously are a sick individual. First of all, if you're doing that. Second of all, you do it right near a school where kids are finding it. And then you can't hold them. And then that person now who's under suspicion for not only dismembering body parts of a human, but possibly murder or some type of assault or anything. The next day, they're hanging out literally in the public library next door.
Right. It's crazy.
Look, that's insane. So again, I think these policies, whether it's about the fentanyl or it's about, dismembering body, it's common sense. As a parent, right, the fact of the matter is, if someone said to me, oh, that guy was throwing body parts out the window the other day, he's just walking around on the street. I have a problem with that. You obviously don't care enough that you think it's a problem that you're throwing body parts out a car window or just throwing them in the woods somewhere like a piece of trash.
No regard for human life.
None. Zero. And just no morals, right? Like no understanding of human decency.
Right.
And you're just walking the street. What do I think you're going to do around my child? What do you think you do around me? You're a public safety threat. You should be behind bars until we can at least understand what the heck was going on. So the fact that we even had to put that bill in, I think is almost embarrassing
100%.
in New York State, but we had to do it.
But that goes back to the criminal bail reform and when all that started after George Floyd. It seemed like the leadership up in Albany kind of ran away from wanting responsibility for putting people in jail and keeping them in jail.
They don't want jails, plain and simple. As I said before, we did a tour of Rikers Island. And I think de Blasio was the mayor at the time when we went to go visit. So some of his staff made sure they came along with us. And they said, oh, we have thousands less people in jails. Well, we understand why. And what they said, the corrections officers aren't doing their job. They're not coming to work. So obviously we're fighting back with this person. But I said, listen to what you're saying. You have thousands of less people in jail. The people that are in jail now, if you actually are staying in jail, you're really bad.
Right.
Right? You're the worst of the worst. You're in, because no one goes to jail anymore, apparently. You can throw body parts out a window. You're not going to jail.
Right.
You can expose a first responder to fentanyl. You're not going to jail. I mean, that's a problem. So the people that are in jail are really dangerous to each other, the other inmates, and the officers that are walking around guarding them and keeping them safe. The fact of the matter is that you have the audacity to sit there and say that the corrections officers aren't doing their jobs while they're working 24-hour shifts, right? 2 on 60. There's 2 corrections officers walk around for 60 incarcerated individuals that are walking around. That's a scary proposition. That's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
So to sit there and say that they're not doing their job while the worst of the worst is in jail, that's a huge problem. It's scary for those people that are working in that jail. And the fact of the matter is, they're human beings too. They deserve to be safe. They deserve to have a good contract, be paid the proper wage, make sure that they have a safe place to work. That's what unions do. And that's the point of them. And again, their leadership there's been doing a great job fighting for them, but we can't get the other side to see that and understand that.
Right. So when I was a police officer in the 7th precinct, we were the only precinct that covered shore to shore here in Suffolk County. So we went from Massac Beach down by the bay in Smiths Point Beach, all the way up to Rocky Point by the Sound. And very often I would lose radio service to my police radio. And sometimes we attributed it to being on a beach. Sometimes we attributed it to being in a basement. But every time it happened, it was scary because you lose your line of communication with the other police officers you're working with.
Right.
That could affect your ability to communicate a tactical situation. Maybe there's somebody in a basement with a gun, and now I can't tell other police officers that are responding of the potential risks. But sometimes it wasn't just as simple as there being poor satellite service. Sometimes there may have been a radio jammer jamming up our frequency as well. So you have written up another bill to help address this issue, where it would make not just the use of a radio jammer illegal, but just the possession of it illegal.
Correct. And that was brought to me actually by a Nassau County detective. Again, I represent the 9th Assembly District, so I get both Nassau and Suffolk County. So I get to represent both amazing police departments that we have here on Long Island, the Nassau and Suffolk County police departments. He brought to me and said the same thing. They had a burglary ring that was going on the North Shore of Nassau County. and they had radio jamming frequency devices in their cars. And they're not even like the ones you see on like Amazon. I mean, it was a bunch of them put together. It took up the size of their trunk. Right. But the sole purpose of it was that if they were casing a house or casing a building or whatever they were going to do, they could turn on this radio jamming device, and it knocks out not only your police radios, but cell phones in the area.
Right.
So me as a resident that's walking around saying, I see something suspicious, I can't call 911. Now, obviously, they're going to do this quick, and like anybody else, you're going to look at your phone and be like, service isn't working. Big deal. I'll wait. But those seconds are precious. If you're, God forbid, in danger, God forbid somebody's hurt, you as police officers are looking for your backup or be able to transmit with dispatch, understanding where you are, what the situation is. If your radios or phones don't work at that point, that is a public safety danger.
100%.
Not only to our police, but again, to the public. That's a problem. If someone's jamming the radio frequency because they don't want someone to call 911, but the person next door needs to call 911 because they're having a heart attack, that person can't get the help that they need. And there's no reason for you to have a radio jamming device in your car anyway. Plain and simple. There's no reason for you to have it. It's a public safety threat and you're putting people's lives in danger. It should be illegal.
Right. So anytime I feel like I'm going to support a bill and speak openly about it, I always try to think, well, what's the argument against it? What is the purpose of having a radio jamming device that would be legitimate? And I can't think of a single one.
I was hoping you guys could tell me because I can't think of one either. And I haven't found anybody that has a good reason for it.
Right.
There's not.
So there's no defense for even possessing these things. So it should be illegal just having it.
Correct. And like I said, it's a public safety danger, not only for police, but look at our EMS that are going to be answering calls, someone that's having a heart attack. And now let's be honest, a lot of things work off of Wi-Fi, work off of your cell phone, whether it's a monitoring device on your arm, whether you have diabetes or something's working for your heart or a check or anything like that. Those things will lose service. That is a danger, plain and simple. And if someone has a big enough radio jamming device, frequency jamming device, they could hurt you. They could hurt others. So plain and simple, it's a public safety threat and it should be illegal.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Again, common sense.
Right.
We would
Absolutely.
think anyway.
Not everybody has that though.
No.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
So, you touched on how a lot of what you do up in Albany, you keep your own family and kids in mind. You want to make sure they're safe. You want to make sure they have the opportunity to grow up in a safe environment that they could succeed and thrive in into the future. So you've been very much involved in the school issues, and your wife's on the board of education, right?
Well, she was. She used to be the PTA president.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Former PTA president.
Former
yes.
PTA.
Yes.
So your family is very much entrenched in the community. And one of the fun facts that I loved about you when I found out is you're actually the school mascot too for your kids' elementary school.
I am. I'm the Eastlake Eagle. We try and keep that quiet. We don't want all the kids to know it. I try and keep it a secret. But I've been doing it since, now I think it's 5 years now. We started during COVID. Again, there wasn't anybody really willing to do it as much as they could. I said, I'll take up the mantle. So now the Eastlake Eagle outfit sits at my house. And I dress up for, obviously first day of school. I just did the back to school bash the other night, when they have certain events. And it's a lot of fun.
And you're the eagle at every event. It's not like, Tig, you're it now and
then. My wife has done it once and she
Okay.
almost passed out. It's not only a cumbersome outfit, but it gets a little hot.
Yeah, it's like walking around in a sauna.
Correct. I think it's made of yak hair. It's super hot. No matter what, you're just sweating inside of it. And that's the other reason really nobody else has worn it, because nobody wants to.
Right.
It's expensive to get cleaned. But this is my last year of it. My youngest daughter, this is her last year at elementary school. So I'll be retiring as the Eastlake Eagle after the end of this year. And hopefully they'll buy a new outfit for someone else.
You don't seem that disappointed in this.
It's a lot of work. In all honesty, I mean, it's got separate huge yellow feet. It's got, yellow pants for your legs. It's got wings. It doesn't have hands, so you can't really,
Can you fly with the wings?
I've tried. That doesn't work. It's too heavy.
And you can't backflips or gymnastics?
No, you can't see in the thing.
Yeah.
I've run over little kids by accident. It's unfortunate.
Poor kids.
You always have to have someone kind of watching you because you can't see down. The beat gets in the way. It's a lot to it.
Maybe we could have somebody make an AI generated video of you doing flips in this thing.
Yeah, well, listen, that's the only way it's going to happen if someone makes an AI generated video of it, because to do anything in that outfit is difficult, no less just walking.
Right. So it's funny, I make light of this AI generated video, but AI is one of those things that kind of scares me going into the future because you don't know what can be created, especially as this continues to develop, where people will see something, think that it's real, but in reality, it's just something that AI made up.
Frightening, isn't it?
It is. It's scary. And a lot of the stuff we do in police work, we sometimes worry about the potential of AI kind of getting in the way with our investigative procedures or making it more difficult for us to find the evidence we would typically want to look for in a crime. But we spoke a little bit about it off air before coming on. There are some guardrails in New York State that protect jobs, whether it be police related jobs or, other sorts of jobs throughout the state. It could protect them from being replaced by AI.
Correct. I mean, there's not enough. And it's really just kind of starting off. And there are a couple of people that are very much concerned about the AI process, especially when it comes to hiring, firing, evaluations for people in certain jobs. But then we talked about it also before. Physically taking jobs from people.
Right.
Whether you look in the fast food industry and they have robots flipping burgers and stuff like that. Again, I understand it that people look at it and go, it's a convenient thing. It's cheaper. Obviously, business owners are going to say it's cheaper.
Profits, yeah.
Right. You don't have to worry about knowing, AI doesn't get sick. Robots don't, need maternity leave. They're not going to ask for a raise. There's none of that. But at the same time, again, I think a responsibility of all of us is to make sure that people have the opportunities and reasons to be able to stay here. And that is creating jobs. That's creating new industries. It's a joke before, but we said it and we say it. But the Terminator and other movies, that we've talked about with AI, none of them ever end well, right? There's not one movie about AI that's ever been good in the end. And unfortunately for someone like me, I think that is where we're headed. Not so much the Terminator portion of it, but I'm saying the fact is that, again, as police officers or any other industry, you don't need someone telling you you're going to be a good cop, you're not, or your investigative work wasn't good enough, or your evaluation, from AI saying is you're not doing your job correctly when there are two people here that are your commanding officers or the people that make those decisions who have 20, 30 years of police work, under their belt and understand what needs to be done, how things get done, how you interact with the public. Having a computer tell you that you're doing a good job or not a good job, I don't think is the way to go. It's not a good.
I agree 100% because those AI programs, they can be programmed by a programmer that has any sort of agenda behind them.
Correct.
Right. So you can't necessarily just fall back on what AI thinks of you for your potential in a job market.
I think the labor is the biggest problem with it, I think, personally, because I think that you're going to steal so many jobs away from the public. If people aren't working, they're going to be forced to go onto welfare and special programs to be able to make ends meet. I think that's a problem.
Correct. I mean, it started, I hate to say it, but we were just talking about this the other day. You go to a supermarket, right? Self-checkout.
Right.
Understood. It's convenient. It's easy. But again, you have 4 self-checkout lines. There used to be 4 people working those checkout lines, right? We may look at it as, it's easier. It's quick. It's whatever. But that's 4 jobs that are no longer there. Right. And I don't know about you, but my grocery prices didn't go down. If anything, they went up. So sitting there saying that we're going to save money by doing this, it's going to save time, money, and effort. It's not. And on top of it, it's going to cost people jobs. And that's something that we can't have. As a union person, as a labor person, I disagree with it wholeheartedly.
Is this something that's being talked up a lot about in Albany? Because it's something that's really on the forefront. It's really going to grow quickly, I think.
So like we were saying before, it is something that people are talking a lot about. But there's 2 schools of thought on it. And listen, I'll be the first person to call it out. Right? There's money involved. There's lobbying firms that are sitting there saying, we want more AI, and they have a lot of money, right? It's tech, and they're going to be donating and giving people money and trying to woo the public and politicians, whether it's in Albany or whether it's, the federal government, to understand their side of it. I look at things, as you said before, I look at everything from my family standpoint, right? Is this going to hurt my family? Is this going to take opportunities and jobs away from my daughters as they get older, or me, or other union members that I've represented, or the working class people of Long Island? I can't have that. So again, to me, if it's going to put our police, if it's going to put our labor force in danger, if it's going to put our children in danger of not having jobs in the future and costing them a future here in New York State, we're going to have to fight back against it and make sure it's done the right way.
Right. So one of the big things that Massapequa has been in the spotlight for recently is the battle over the mascot name, the Chiefs.
Yes.
Right. So this has become a national issue, right?
Yes.
You've been trying to address it in the state, but I know people from the Trump administration have even come to Massapequa to talk to the Board of Ed and the constituents in Massapequa. So being a person who's so involved in the community, in your kid's school, dressing up as a mascot yourself, how do you see this continuing to develop? Where are we at now with this issue with the name of the Chiefs being your mascot?
So again, I think the Board of Education has done a great job in understanding what the Massapequa residents want, and where their heart and heads are at. And they're really looking at it. Once Linda McMahon came to visit Massapequa after she was named Director of Education for the federal government, and understanding that this is now about a level of fairness, right? And I understand that people say that using Native American imagery is hurtful and maybe even racist at points, and understood, right? And I had specifically myself, Senator Alexis White, Massapequa Board of Education, had a meeting with some of the local tribes to discuss this and have a back and forth, the open dialogue that we like to have with people on understanding what the issue is. And just to tell you a story, we were sitting in that meeting for 3 hours. And one of the local tribal chiefs had said, it's the wrong headdress on the Massapequa Chiefs logo. And I said, great. And I said, I don't mean great like it's the wrong head.
Right.
I said, great, let's use this as an educational tool.
Right.
And say, okay, I think that it was a West Coast headdress. We're using the wrong, it was an East Coast. We're using the wrong one, whatever it was. I said, let's change it, use it and understand that kids in this area, Long Island, every Long Island area is named after a Native American tribe.
Right.
I mean, we have all Native American names. Massapequa is pretty Native American. As Supervisor Saldina would say, Massapequa is Native American for where the police live.
Right, exactly.
Right? He loves to say that.
That is his line.
That is his line. It's a great line, and it makes sense. But again, understanding the tradition of Massapequa, but also the history of it. I said we can use this as an example of how we had it wrong. Let's change it. And because again, educating kids on the Native American history of not only Massapequa, but of Long Island, I think would be a great way to segue and say, let's teach about the Native American history around there. Their answer was just flat out no. So I was like, oh, why? You brought it up. I thought it'd be a great idea. They just said, how does it feel to be told no? So instantly I said, well, as a no, I don't want to have this conversation anymore. No matter what we say, we're going to be wrong. So now understanding that, just taking it the next step, understanding that if it's hurtful, it's, New York State passed a law a number of years ago, saying that this falls under that. If it's hurtful and it's racist and it's biased and it's singling out a single group, fine. I understand that. Then everybody should have to change their names. Unfortunately, there was one town upstate that was able to keep even the chief's name because I think it was roughly 60% of the students that go there are Native American. Well, if you're allowed to keep the chief's name there and it's not racist there and it's not hurtful there, it shouldn't be hurtful anywhere. If something's racist or hurtful or wrong, it's wrong no matter where you are.
It either is or it isn't.
Correct. So to be able to pick and choose it, I think that's where New York State has now overstepped and caused the issue for themselves to say it's okay here, but not here. It's okay this place and not here. And then you have our neighboring town, Seaford in Nassau County, which is the Vikings. Right. So now if they wanted to, and I'll use them for two examples, if they wanted to change their name to the Chiefs, they could, even though they don't have to change their name because Vikings isn't hurtful. They could change the name to the Chiefs. But because we had our name as the Chiefs already, we can't just take the Native American headdress down, the logo down. You have to change the name wholeheartedly.
That doesn't really make sense.
Well, New York State does a lot of that, right? But when does it become the point where somebody that's Norwegian says that the Vikings is hurtful?
Right.
Right. And they have to change their name. What's not hurtful?
Right. The Fighting Irish.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I found this to be the most absurd issue, and really, because I feel like as a mascot, especially you're targeting the mascots, they're points of celebration. You're celebrating the mascot.
Right.
The people that go to that school have pride in that mascot, and should bring notoriety to the history of Native Americans. That's the way that I look at it. At least it's a pride prideful thing. It's not a racist thing.
Right.
Correct.
It's meant to be a tribute.
Yeah, and it's always been that way in Massapequa. And in all honesty, Massapequa self-policed it, where we used to have what they would say was a mascot. One of the students would dress up with a headdress. And they actually stopped that years ago because they said it's probably too far, right? So we don't do the chop. We don't do any chanting in the stands. They don't do that. They haven't done it for years because they kind of self-policed in that way and said, this may be too much. But again, the pride that Massapequa, and again, whether you want to have them, the imagery or not, whatever the case would be, the fact of the matter is that people that either have gone to the high school, not gone to the high school, move into Massapequa. It sounds ridiculous to some people, but they're proud to be a Massapequa chief.
Right.
And it is. It's a symbol of pride in the community. It's not even just about the school and the teams. It's about the community and the pride that they have in the community. And I think that's bigger than anything that you could have sports-wise. It's just everybody says, I'm proud to be a Massapequa chief. And that is because of our history. That is because of the Native American history in that area and where they're from. And I look at it as bigger than a headdress. I look at it bigger than that. It's a celebration of pride and history in the Massapequas, and they want to take that away.
Right.
Did like a culmination of Native American groups like approach the state and say, hey, this is an issue? Or did they just themselves one day just wake up and say there's nothing else we really have to deal with, and they decide this is the issue that they wanted to?
Well, I think there'd be some people that tell you that they have been approached by it. We're still waiting to see that evidence. No one has it. It's unfortunate. Those things get lost somehow, Tanner. It's just weird.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre. But I think Massapequa's doing a great job, and the communities come together over it. Again, not going too far with it, but saying their piece and petitions and understanding. And we've had fundraisers and everything that we can fight this with a lawsuit, and understanding that it's about keeping the pride in the area and understanding our history. Because again, if you're not celebrating the history of the Native Americans that did live in Massapequa beforehand, who's teaching about it?
Right.
Where are you going to learn about it? The kids, then it goes away. And that's unfortunate because you don't want to lose the history of the area.
Right.
And the best way to have children engaged in it is to understand where it comes from, where their town was before we all got here, and the pride that we still have in our Native American history here on Long Island. I think that's the best way to keep it relevant. Because once you change that, once it's gone, it's gone. Why would you want to learn about it?
The history is deleted, basically.
Correct. You're deleting your own history.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So along those same lines with the school district and you trying to be the change you want to see in the school and maintain what you had for your children going forward. There was an unfortunate incident years ago involving a local athlete, Connor. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to pass legislation now that can maybe prevent the tragedy that occurred with Connor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Connor, what happened, and what you're trying to do going forward to prevent that again?
Yeah, so Connor Kaysen was a high school athlete at Massapequa High School. Last year, they were having a charity hockey game. You know, he played ice hockey, great kid, very involved in the town, very involved in sports, great family. And unfortunately, during the hockey game, he passed away. He had an issue with his heart on the ice, went down. They tried to revive him, and unfortunately, they weren't able to. Just looking at that, again, as speaking to his family, his friends, understanding that he got his regular checkups, he got, regular doctor visits, but they never specifically looked at his heart, right? And listen, we were all younger once. I'm older than both of you. But when you're
glad you pointed out, because I
would say, we could tell by looking at us, right, that I'm older than you guys. But I just wanted to point that out for everybody listening. Understanding that when you're young, you still have to think about your heart health and understand that for some reason, whatever the case may be, is more and more kids are having heart issues, maybe whatever the reason is. But you need to be aware, right, as a parent, right, because I have two daughters that play sports, and as that athlete, that you need to get your heart checked. And Connor was 17 years old. So I spoke with his family. I've spoke with friends, the school, and we're all behind it. So I came up with a bill called Connor's Law, which would require interscholastic athletes playing, especially in high school sports, that part of your sports physical is at least an EKG or an echocardiogram, which is just giving you basically a check of your heart.
Right.
And if Connor had that, and talking to his mom and his father, who are amazing with this, they believe that they would have found the fact that Connor had an underlying issue, and they could have saved his life. again, and speaking to other doctors, and we were on News 12, and another heart doctor who is actually my daughter's heart doctor, just for checkups, thankfully, has said the same thing. So again, having kids get checked at a young age could save lives.
Right.
Right. And that's what our job is as legislators, is to make sure that as many kids as we possibly can get their heart checked. And make sure, listen, I want you to play sports. I want, both my daughters play sports.
Right.
I played sports. We want our kids to be involved. But you as a parent who were busy, right, working 2 jobs possibly, running back and forth, you get your kid to the regular doctor and they say everything looks good. That's what you hear all the time. Everything looks good, but you can't see inside. You're not getting your heart checked. Mm-hmm. And the sports physical right now, I don't think it's changed much since I was a kid, except now I think you have to put on there if there's a history of heart issues in your family. Other than that, there's no check of your heart. It's still the same old check you for scoliosis, ears, eyes, nose, throat, this, that, the other thing. Make sure you don't have a hernia. That's about as invasive as a sports physical gets still. And that's a problem. And now you're having kids more and more throughout the country, young athletes with heart issues. If we could save one kid, as Connor's father said, it's worth it. And it's something that we can do. And like I said, the Kasich family and the Connor Kasich Memorial Foundation have been fierce advocates of this. They're going to be coming up to Albany with me this year to help get more people to co-sponsor, to push it along in the Assembly and the Senate, because it's important. It's going to save lives.
Yeah. And, to go through such a tragedy as a parent, I commend them. And I really look up to them for being able to take that tragedy and trying to make change and try to help other families so that other families don't have to go through what they went through, because it's heartbreaking as a parent.
I listen, like I said, I have 2 young daughters. I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine, but watching them, I just attended their memorial golf outing, watching, like you said, the strength that they have to sit there and do that, right? To sit there and advocate to help save other children. Right. And not only the memory of Connor, but to help kids, help other people and families along the way, I think is amazing. They're an amazing family, but they really have turned this tragedy into a triumph. Yeah. And trying to help other people and then maybe save other kids, get their heart checked, or just bring really awareness even. If that's the smallest thing we could do is bring awareness.
Sometimes that's the first step, the first hurdle.
Right. And you have to get your heart checked. So I tell every parent, if you can, get your kid an EKG, echocardiogram, make sure they get their heart checked because they could have an underlying issue. And Connor, by all means, was, an everyday kid, playing good athlete, playing hockey, and then just boom. And you don't want to see that happen to you if it's preventable.
And those are the last people you usually think are going to have heart problems are the athletes.
Correct. Right. Because they're in shape, right? They're athletic. They're doing stuff all the time. But just unfortunately, if you don't get it checked and you don't know. And the best way to know is just get it checked. And honestly, you probably just have to get it checked once, right? If you get your heart checked, our heart doctor for my daughter, because they heard a murmur when she was younger, and we went in to check it, and he was like, no, I'll never see you again. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Perfect. Yeah. Right? That's what you want to hear
as a father.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's the best thing you can hear is your daughter's perfect. Heart-wise, she's fantastic. She's paying my butt. But she's perfect heart-wise. And that's what you want. But if you don't know, you don't know. So you got to get these kids checked. It's so important to make sure that heart health, not only for adults, but for children, is checked.
Yeah. Well, Mike, we thank you for your friendship. We thank you for the support you show us and law enforcement and the public as a whole up in Albany. And I think it's really great to see the love that you have for your community, and you're trying to make the difference so that your kids can have what you had growing up. Are there any parting remarks you want to make? Is there any other messages you want to get out there before we close up this episode?
No, nothing really specific. Again, it's one thing I tell people all the time is that, and we talked about before, me getting elected, right? You never know where life's going to bring you. And you keep an open mind. Understand that, listen, I was a sanitation worker for 15 years before I got elected to office. It wasn't the path I thought I was going to do. I was very happy being a sanitation worker, working with those guys, being a union rep. And then, Tanner, as we talked about before, I was a public safety officer at a local college at night doing that. I loved my life. It was great. But life changes and life brings you to different spots. So you have to be able to roll with it and understand that maybe there's something else there and there's a reason why you're going to that. And again, coming in during COVID, coming in when, obviously public safety itself was being questioned and putting people in danger. I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So you never know where you're going to end up, but you usually end up where you're supposed to be. So having that relationship with you guys, with all our PBAs, our law enforcement, and again, our labor unions, for me, has been amazing 5 years. And I look forward to keep supporting all of you and the working men and women of Long Island.
We appreciate that, and that experience and is invaluable to us up there, and the relationships that you have with us. We appreciate it.
No, I thank you guys both. Thanks for having me here, and let's keep going.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Good to see you guys.
All right,
Thanks
you
so
too.
much for having me.